Hello, everybody. I'm Alexis Brink, and we have a very exciting workshop to introduce to you today. It's with Pamela Levin, and the workshop is called Rewriting Physical Illness Scripting, and it's November 16 at 1 till 3 Eastern, and it's through NATAA. So I'm so happy to welcome you, Pamela.
Thank you.
I would like to read a little bit about you. Pamela Levin, RN, TSTA, has studied the relationship between physical symptoms and the mind for over 50 years. She received the Eric Berne Memorial Scientific Award for her work on the cycle of development. She co-founded the ITAA Women's Caucus, and she was president of the Eric Berne Seminars and editor of the ITAA script. And I just found out that you launched your book yesterday called Mind as Medicine, How to Discover and Transform Hidden Illness Imprints. And it's available on Amazon. So very welcome to you, and we're excited about your workshop. And I have some questions for you.
Okay.
What brought you to transactional analysis, and which concept really inspired you?
Well, I was working as a newly graduated nurse for the state of Florida, setting up a day treatment center for alcoholics. And I heard that someone on the West Coast was curing alcoholics. And I just thought that was amazing. So when I moved from Florida to California, on the way, I stopped to see a friend in Chicago, and she said, "Here's games people play. You've got to read this." And I read it, and I was just stunned. So when I came to California, and I remarked to a friend that I needed to get a job, and she said, "Well, what would you do if you could do anything?" And I thought she was being really flip. So I responded in kind and just said, "Well, I'd do anything for Eric Berne." And she said, "Oh, I'll get you introduced to him." I thought, "Sure, you will." So, but she knew a social worker who was attending his seminars, the San Francisco Social Psychiatry seminars in 1966. And you had to have a contract of confidentiality to be allowed, and of course, Eric's permission to be allowed to attend. But he asked Eric, and Eric said yes. So I went and I was hooked.
What is the very thing that hooked you?
They were solving problems that was so vital and alive. They were like trying to figure things out rather than just telling you, "Here's how it is." And at the time, Eric was he ran the seminars in such a way that he always asked a question. In other words, it was a working seminar. And the question he was asking at the time was, how do people develop scripts? And he had this habit. He would call on anybody and say, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I didn't know. So I was hanging out in the back of the room. But, at the end, I was kind of sneaking out of the door. And he caught me at the door and said, "Pamela, what do you think about how people develop scripts?" And I was like, ah. I said, "Well, first of all, I think you have to know how people develop, and then how people develop scripts." And he looked at me in the eye and he said, "Yes," and pointed at me like that, like, "Okay, this is your job." And,
how wonderful.
it really took.
Yeah, so you had a first-hand experience with Eric Berne, which is so
Yes,
wonderful to hear.
I studied with him for 4 years until he died in
Wonderful.
1970.
Okay. Well, that's very, very interesting. You're lucky to be one of those people as his work lives
Yes.
on. I wanted to ask you, can you explain a little bit about the mind-body connection and how this harmony may manifest?
It's a huge subject, as no doubt you know, but I think to summarize it, the words of Candace Pert are really the best way of doing that. She was the doctor who figured out the opiate receptor in the brain, a neuroscientist, and she said, "Your mind is in every cell of your body." And that is really huge, like, wow. So whatever we're doing in our mind is being translated to our bodies. And then she also said, thoughts become things. So that was a key point for me in thinking, okay, what are we thinking that could be translated into physical symptoms?
Interesting. I understand that I work with energy healing, so that's very similar. Also, I see that a lot in my practice as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, so you really developed this method, hidden illness imprints. Can you explain what they are from a TA perspective?
Yeah, so illness, well, first of all, let's talk about imprints because we make imprints. We're not born knowing how to talk and have three ego states and transact and all that. We have to develop it. And how we develop is a connection between our developmental tasks as we grow through childhood and the responses of the environment, typically the parent. So we're forming our child ego state initially in the very young um, ages of development, and then what we connect with the environment, how the environment responds to our developmental needs, and that gets wedded together and forms an imprint that originally is conscious and can be seen, but becomes unconscious because it becomes the directions for how we run our bodies. So when there's a problem with the illness, with the imprint, that can create illness in later life.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me, certainly. How can you give an example of how we can see this work in practice? Like, do you have an example maybe that you can give?
Well, the one that really set me on this path is a woman I'm calling Alice in the book. And she was diagnosed, she was a very intelligent, well-educated woman, but she was diagnosed with an incurable progressive autoimmune disease. And she'd been to a lot of different doctors and so forth. And this diagnosis came down from one of the best university hospitals in the world. So, and she was getting progressively weaker. And she heard something about me doing early trauma work. And even though she was a social worker, she didn't know what that was. So she made an appointment with me. And I asked her, as one of the things that Eric taught us, to ask people to say what they want and need in 8-year-old language. So I asked her to translate this very lengthy Latin diagnosis that said she had 6 months to live into 8-year-old language. And so she said, "Oh, that's easy." She said, "My immune system is attacking my skeletal muscle. And when it gets done with that, it'll attack my organs and I'll be dead." Whoa.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah. So,
Powerful.
yeah. So translating that developmentally, I said, well, I have no idea if this is going to turn out to be true or not. We'll have to see as we do the work. But my guess would be that there's a problem between the first 6 months of your life when you were a little baby and helpless, and the second 6 months when you were developing your skeletal muscle and being able to move and breathe. What's the word I want? Crawl and then walk. And her answer was, "I hate it. Let's make another appointment."
Wow.
So, like, intuitively, she knew that, and we did indeed find a huge problem at that age, which she cleared and eventually came back and said, "Guess what? No longer have the disease."
Amazing. So this will really give therapists an opportunity also to work with the physical body through through therapy, really. And
Yes,
yes.
because
So can you give, yeah, go ahead.
the mind always impacts physical symptoms and
Yeah.
problems. The question is, how is it impacting it? And if it is helping or hindering, and if it's hindering, what's hindering and what to do about it. That's, I mean,
Well,
TA just is
yeah.
perfect for doing that kind of work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's beautiful how you show this connection between mind and body and how we can resolve it. So, can you list like 2 or 3 points what students will walk away with when taking your workshop?
There are 8 of them that I collected here. So we're going to review ego state development, first of all, and its connection to foundational stages, because that's where the imprints are. And then they'll get a self-assessment tool for determining strengths and weaknesses with the tasks of each of the stages. And then they'll have an ability to identify the 3 components of healthy imprints, and then the 5 components of ones that are not healthy, that are instructing illness. And then we'll have an experience of a structure that we use to identify an illness imprint, a way to compose a personal affirmation that addresses that imprint, and a way to fashion a treatment contract from that imprint.
So this really sounds like a very full workshop with very clear tools that people will walk away with and that they can use in their practice.
Yes, I hope so. I really want people
Yeah,
to be able to work with physical illness.
yeah, I agree with you. We see so much of it today.
Yes.
So, everybody, our next NATAA workshop uh, with Pamela Levin, Rewriting Physical Illness Scripting. And the date is November 16, time 1 till 3 Eastern. And by the way, her book it just got launched on Amazon and it's called Mind as Medicine, How to Discover and Transform Hidden Illness Imprints. So thank you so much, Pamela.
And
And
thank you, Alexis.
we will see you really soon. Thank you.
Yes. Goodbye.
Bye.